Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for being here. I have my colleague Stan Golubchik here with me from our global security team in the US. And I'm based actually in Sydney, but I was actually born here in Singapore, even though I don't sound like it. I will be spending the first part of this presentation taking you through some of the reasons why security is important. We know there's a varied audience here, so we're not going to assume you're all security Uber experts. The audiences I'm usually in front of are fairly focused security people, but we want to take it a little bit easy before Stan gives you the actual answers to how we solve a lot of the key security challenges that we see our customers talk to us about. Now, we at McAfee, and we've been in this business for almost 30 years, and we cover both corporate enterprises and consumers. So you and I as citizens, you can go download a McAfee piece of software to help protect you at home and to help protect your devices to be safe or safer against all the big cyber threats we have out there. We also have one of the world's largest threat intelligence databases. We get, on the average, 48 billion queries per day. Now, to give you some idea of scale, I think the largest social media network is Twitter in terms of number of updates they get per day. That is 88 times the number of updates Twitter actually gets per day. We see on the average 8 new threats every second. So by the time we're done talking, there'll be a couple of new 1,000 threats that we've cataloged and had to analyze. In terms of the growth of malware, so you're all very familiar with malware, even if you're not security people, we've seen a growth of 35% year on year to about a sample of 70 million globally. Mobile malware is on the rise more so than just general malware itself, particularly here in Asia-Pac, because most of our countries that we have in Asia-Pac are mobile natives. So for example, China and India are really great examples. So the attack surface for cyber attacks to get after people in our region is really to go after mobile, hence the rise. And ransomware, as you would have heard, WannaCry and NotPetya last year, is really on the rise. 59% year on year. Those big numbers down the bottom, I won't get into too much detail. The point is effectively most of the non-traditional ways of getting after your data and your systems are on the rise. So people are being very creative in trying to get into your systems. So the cyber attackers are getting much, much more creative and a lot smarter, and that makes our jobs as defenders that much more challenging. We worked with the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington to understand the real cost of cybercrime to our global economy. And that number is $600 billion US. In Asia-Pac, I have a slide next, but it's about $171 billion. So to give you some context, if you think about the global cost of cybercrime as a tax on growth, meaning the internet economy, it's about a 14% tax. So when you go online tonight and buy a new pair of shoes for, say, $200, I'm partial to Air Jordans myself, so they cost $200-300. You're paying about $28 because the cyber criminals are running rampant. Now, cybercrime as a whole still isn't the top crime in the world. It's number 3. Government corruption and narcotics trafficking is still 1 and 2. But it makes up about 1/7 of the global cost of crime. And the things people tend to go after are intellectual property, and they go after financial crime, so your money, effectively, they're trying to go after, and state secrets. And your identities, by the way. In Asia-Pac, as I said, it's about 171 billion, so that's about a third of that number. We have 2 of the states or nations that are most active globally. The 4, just for your information, are Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China. North Korea, Iran, and Russia tend to go after financial information. Now, let me qualify when I say talk about those countries. We're not talking about necessarily the nation states, even though in some respects the criminal element is related to the actual country. But we're just talking about the fact that the originators of cybercrime tend to come from these 4 countries, and we happen to have 2 of them in Asia-Pac. And particularly here in Singapore, we have the cybersecurity bill that you've just introduced that forces a lot of companies, including the SMBs, to make security a priority. And we advocate security by design, meaning particularly when you go into the cloud, if you don't build security in from the start, you're in for a huge challenge when you move forward and try and reverse engineer or patch up your systems, because you're that much more exposed when you go to the cloud. I was talking to Paul Singh yesterday, so all you Singaporeans may know him from Radio 389, and I think he hosts one of your soccer S-League kind of broadcasts. And we were talking about on the radio SMBs. And you might know this, but Spring Singapore actually says 99% of the Singapore economy is driven by SMB, right? And he asked me the question, so do SMBs not care about cybersecurity? Should they care about cybersecurity? Now, when you have an industry group that powers 99% of your industry or your economy, and you've got a cybersecurity bill that forces you to do it, finance and the financial industry in Singapore and Southeast Asia is a piece of your critical infrastructure. And the cybersecurity bill, for those of you who aren't aware, is designed to make sure that you stay protected, particularly in the areas that you define as critical infrastructure. Now, I like to talk about risk, even though we're talking about cybersecurity. For those of you who haven't heard security people talk a lot, we like to say cybersecurity, you need to stay secure, you need to be 100% secure. That's actually not the case. And if you try and protect everything, you will be doomed to failure. Cybersecurity is actually designed to reduce risks to an amount or an appetite that you are comfortable with. So you frame the problem as you have a risk problem to solve. You use cybersecurity to solve that problem, and your goal is to be resilient. You want to be able to stay in business. In the cloud, your top risks are these. Data breach, obviously a big one. It happens every week. Second one, particularly in AWS, in cloud, insufficient identity, credential, and access management. Meaning, there's way too many privileged accounts out there. You've given too much access to people. So reduce the amount of privileged access you give. And AWS does a pretty good job of enforcing or encouraging you to do that. And obviously, as an attacker, I want to get your privileged account so I can get into your systems. I don't want an account that has limited access. I want the account that can get everything, if I possibly can, particularly if I'm trying to get at your data and I'm trying to bring your systems down. Cyber threats, you obviously know, I just talked about it, is a huge issue. APIs, I just said Panera Bread. Insecure APIs are a huge issue to deal with, particularly when you're building applications natively for the cloud and in the cloud. Insufficient due diligence, meaning even though we're trying to be cloud native and we would like to have as much in the cloud as we possibly can, if you haven't done the due diligence to decide what you can put in the cloud, you're opening yourself up to a lot of risks that you otherwise wouldn't be exposed to had you have everything on-premise. And finally, shared vulnerabilities. So things like hardware vulnerabilities. If you're in the multi-tenant environment and an attacker can jump to a different tenant via the hardware, you have a huge issue to deal with because you can be secure, but if your co-tenant isn't, that is a risk you have to deal with. Now, in terms of the key issues people talk to us about, obviously compliance is a huge one, right? So there's a whole bunch of baseline things you need to be aware of and get up to speed with. Fundamental security is at the very least, even if you're an SMB or a startup, something you need to get up to speed with. Data security from device to cloud. We at McAfee are the device to cloud cybersecurity company. We have unparalleled protection for data security for everything from device to network through to cloud, and we can prove it. Now, in a lot of environments, the reality today is some people haven't gone native cloud. A lot of our enterprise companies still have a lot of stuff on-premise and in the networks. But everybody has devices, whether it's your mobile phone, and everybody has some level of cloud today. And if you're trying to move things to the cloud, there is a need to stay secure in that journey. DevSecOps, you all understand because you're Amazon AWS people, but effectively, how can you make sure that when you write code, you have some fundamental security built in so that you don't have to rely on your developers to write security into your code? Because if they don't and you don't have fundamental security, you are leaving yourself open to a lot of things like having open unsecured APIs. Frictionless security. Security aims to actually not get in the way. We actually want to enable business. So frictionless means how can you enable the business to run faster but maintain security? So I use soccer as an analogy. You run on the soccer field with shin pads so you can be a better soccer player. If you didn't have that, you'd be running around trying to not get kicked in the shins, weren't you? And finally, you want to make sure that your defense lifecycle for everything you do in the cloud is accounted for. You want to be able to identify threats. You want to be able to detect them. You want to be able to remediate or respond, and then remediate any issues you might have. And we focus on all those things that you see up there: visibility, data security, automating all that as much as we possibly can, giving you central management, giving you the advanced analytics and ability to respond, and also being able to protect you in the first instance should you get hit by an attack. So what does this mean for security? I already talked about new vulnerabilities. The old approaches don't work the same way in the cloud as articulated by those risks I've just put up there. And then simultaneously managing old and new is expensive. So you need to have a consolidated, managed, automated approach to be able to orchestrate one single way to deal with security from device through to cloud. So to bring it back to before I hand over to Stan, you need to focus on three things. You need to have complete visibility of your environments. You need to be able to dynamically and holistically protect your key assets. You need to know what your key assets are, and you need to be able to single pane of glass to manage your policies and to be able to understand what threats you're exposing yourself to. So without further ado, let me invite Stan up here to take you through how we solve these problems for you.
Thanks, Ian. So as Ian has introduced me, my name is Stan Golubchik. I'm a global solution architect. My focus is essentially working with our customers, all of you in the audience, providing the guardrails and enhancing your security posture through implementing the proper security controls to be able to do so. So in the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to actually be focusing on solution-driven outcomes. That solution-driven outcome is actually composed of several components: reducing operational friction, reducing operational expenses, also driving actionable workflows through automation and orchestration, and lastly, and most importantly, increasing your security posture. As Ian adequately was able to articulate our current attack landscape, you need to understand the larger picture. Being able to understand how to increase security posture has a fundamental overlay with the shared responsibility model that was developed by AWS. So as AWS, I think, effectively articulates, AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, meaning the actual physical data center, the physical security, also the servers, and the host virtualized layer on top of that. Everything above that and outside of the scope is responsibility for the tenant. The tenant has responsibility of security in the cloud. So what does that mean? That means that you, as a tenant of AWS, has to ensure that you have security of your own data, your platform applications, operating systems, also client and server-side data encryption, along with network visibility and security. Understanding these core tenets is a key principle to ensure that your security posture is in an optimal state. As we look at how we actually fill in the gaps within the shared responsibility model, what we'll be able to see is that those solution-driven outcomes I just mentioned can start to fill in with appropriate and correlated security controls. So as a customer, and with each one of these layers as your responsibility, we can start to overlay the appropriate controls to understand how to facilitate proper security planes and measures for compliance reasons, also new threats that are emerging through various attack vectors as well. With the customer data to secure data, that can actually be facilitated through such a solution as a cloud access security broker. Being able to have essentially a bottleneck to manage all your hybrid data center, if you may, and also in your AWS data center, the applications that are sanctioned, unsanctioned, and also custom applications is a critical key component to be able to see into this customer data. Securing the platform and applications and also utilizing identity access management is actually a hybrid mix. With identity access management, utilizing key native AWS services as IAM is an effective way to do so. But also being able to utilize cloud workload security and CASB as an overlay through security controls is also an effective way to ensure that your platform and applications are controlled and measured through a security perspective. For the operating systems, having a solution such as a cloud workload security is also an overlay of a solution that can be effective in providing the necessary security visibility into the operating systems and network and firewall configuration. For the network and firewall configuration, that can actually be done through microsegmentation. So natively being able to actually configure the firewall policies through security groups is a core tenet of this. Client-side and server-side data encryption. That can also be overlaid with native AWS services, but also extends into web gateway security that provides federation services through SAML, OAuth, and others such as that. Data protection for the cloud is also another overlay. And lastly, network traffic can also be facilitated and controlled through a network security platform or solution that is actually able to monitor, detect, also inspect network packets that are ingressing, egressing out of your VPCs and your AWS infrastructure as a whole. Last year, Gartner defined the Cloud Workload Protection Platform, CWPP. CWPP, essentially the paradigm shift that we're seeing now with what used to be the endpoint security for on-prem to how the workloads are now being virtualized in AWS and fully function through mission-critical workloads and data. That definition of the CWPP has extended into our own development efforts into platforms and technologies, such as our cloud workload security. Cloud work security is a direct overlay into the requirements that we see within CWPP and also critical control points that we ensure the customers to be able to facilitate through our solution or platform. So what are those key components that actually will develop the solution? Well, we start off with automation and discovery of deployment. So full visibility of any workload, ephemeral or long-standing, can be seen and discovered through data center connectors. So this provides you the ability to also view on-prem workloads and also the ones that are in the AWS infrastructure. So the end-to-end holistic overview of these workloads is a key component. Defending against advanced attacks. As Ian had mentioned, the attack landscape has really started to shift in a certain way. The attack vectors are similar, but the tactics, techniques, and procedures and processes are actually adapting in different ways that are more relevant to being able to extrapolate data from your critical workloads within AWS. So being able to deploy the proper defense tools and security controls into your workloads with AWS is a necessary component. It can be done through CWS, through automation, through DevOps, through Chef, Ansible, Puppet, or also AWS OpsWorks. We can also visualize and detect network threats, being able to ingest native AWS services such as VPC flow logs, and also GuardDuty, which is a recent security service provided by AWS. With one-click deployment, you're actually aggregating a multitude of data feeds through AWS APIs directly into CWS. CWS can actually contextualize that threat intelligence in a meaningful way for the user to be able to understand what threats are actually prevalent and other suspicious activity, such as network anomalies. And finally, talking about how we can provide the ability to do network segmentation. So then micro-segmentation, as I mentioned earlier, is providing the ability to go into firewall settings and adjust security groups as necessary on the fly through single pane of glass. Providing that pivotal action workflow is essential to be effective in taking a glance at these potentially suspicious or non-compliant workloads and making the adjustments and the corrections that are necessary to remediate those tasks. So as we look at DevSecOps and how we deliver this actionable workflow, we provide the capability of integrating with automation tools such as Chef, Puppet, and OpsWorks, as mentioned. So being able to go through a single pane of console through CWS, you can actually visualize the threats, and then automating a script that will be able to either remediate the machine, it can quarantine it, it can deploy a solution directly on the machine. That solution, for instance, could be our machine learning endpoint protection. We also can deploy network protection directly to the workload that will provide that workload to be able to be scanned for ingress and egress traffic that's coming with and outside of your VPCs. So as we take a more comprehensive look of our cloud workload security, we can see that it's integrated natively with several AWS services. We have GuardDuty integration. We also have VPC flow log integration, CloudTrail to audit and be able to pull in comprehensive API data as we aggregate it into the backend database of our solution. And also the DevOps deployment through OpsWorks. And this solution does provide the ability to actually protect and correct any potential threats within your workloads within AWS. This single pane of glass also will scale out to the customers who are looking to currently migrate into AWS. If you have CWS deployed, you can actually manage it in AWS, and it can provide the visibility to your on-prem workloads as well. That scalability and that holistic overview of everything within your environment, your infrastructure, that is critical, is a key component that ensures that you have the end-to-end visibility. As we start to understand the shift into the public cloud, what we've seen with our customers is that our customers have utilized some of our network security. Our IPS IDS technology is actually one of the best, and it's been a 11 years consecutive leader in the Magic Quadrant. And we've seen a lot of network threats that have become pervasive, north to south attacks, east to west, lateral threats that are prominent and still pervasive in AWS. So providing the visibility into a solution with the solution is a key tenet of our network security platform. So this provides the ability to shed more light into shadow IT. The utilization of any unsanctioned applications can now be seen through the platform. Also providing a solution that is at cloud scale. So either if you're an SMB customer, utilizing a small infrastructure of just several workloads, a single instance of a sensor can be spun up and protecting your workloads from any ingress network threats. Or we also have the ability to scale out through our well-architected framework alignment to provide a multi-tenant deployment of our network security as well. And lastly, talking about actionable workflows. Having a single pane of glass, real-time visibility, and automation does drive more value to you as a customer to utilize this network security platform. The comprehensive view from an architecture perspective does show you the visibility that this solution itself, when it first was developed from going from on-prem solution as is re-architected for the cloud, was aligned with the well-architected framework. So what does that really mean? There's a few components I'll point out. In this case, talking about cloud scale. With a hyper-growth environment like AWS, and we understand our customer requirements of having very large enterprise scale environments, the scalability can be done through auto-scaling. So if a sensor does get pegged at its maximum throughput, we'll set off an auto-scale policy to be able to actually spin up a second sensor or a third sensor until the throughput can actually be met for the requirement side. The management of the solution as well can be set in a hybrid deployment or solely in AWS as well, with the network security manager, the controller, as the key components of the solution, managing the control and facilitation of the operations for the sensor. So as we start to see a more holistic picture of understanding the IaaS security controls, controlling the instances and infrastructure layer on that control plane, we need to kind of extend our vision a little bit more and start looking at a SaaS offering, giving you a holistic solution when it comes to security. CASB does provide the ability to provide a SaaS security solution that can provide management of sanctioned applications, unsanctioned applications, and also any custom applications that you're building inside the house. So as we look at some of the use cases, we can see that obviously lack of visibility is going to be one of the major concerns. What activity is being taken within the cloud? What are your developers doing? What is your IT doing, your admins? Are they doing something that they're not supposed to? Providing that activity monitoring capability is a key component. As we see insiders or attackers exfiltrating data from a sanctioned cloud, we can utilize user behavioral analytics, and this provides essentially any alerts or visibility to analyze deviations of standardized behavior of your users within your environment. So if there was, for example, a user coming in from a geolocation, let's say in Russia, and you're based here, that might be a little bit suspicious in activity. So that correlation and analysis of events will be able to actually trigger this kind of visibility and suspicious activity. Employees uploading regulated data to cloud outside of the policy that's regulated. So ensuring that the guardrails for compliance is set and that your users are set within those guardrails is also an important key factor. And that can be done through data loss prevention, through information rights management, and also device-based access controls. Employees sharing sensitive data with third-party users can also be controlled through collaboration controls. And to follow up the previous point, employees downloading data with unmanaged devices can be managed through device management controls and also IARM. So there's some concern as well that cloud service providers and their employees have access to the customer data. As they're hosting your data, your critical work data, providing the encryption methodologies and techniques to be able to actually provide encryption at rest or in transit is also a key component, and it can be facilitated through a CASB solution. And then lastly, employees using high-risk shadow cloud services. So having the discovery and the blocking coaching of such actions. To be able to actually also enforce the actions intelligently with a CASB solution, we've provided another solution to augment the CASB solution, and that's with our McAfee Web Gateway. And this provides the web traffic management security to deploy this in multiple ways. This can be deployed within AWS as a forward or reverse proxy solution that is able to identify and scan application layer 7 data and any kind of web traffic that's coming in and out of your environment to ensure there's no malicious threats within there. And a few other ways we can actually also deploy our CASB solution, which is sky high, is through 4 different arrays. So these API integrations are very easy to set up. Our CASB solution sky high was born in the first cloud solution, providing the capability to look at sanctioned applications through the Skylink, Lightning Link, and we also have a universal mode set through Sky Gateway, and also the email mode set through Sky Gateway as well. This can link into your on-prem data center to provide visibility into those applications as well. So overviewing some of these security controls, how they inlay into the overall story to really increase your security posture, I think could be straightforward and kind of digested in some of those manners, utilizing some of the solutions. But at the end of the day, I would like to really share a journey that we partaked on, McAfee, as a customer zero. And if we didn't actually back our theoretical and practical application of these solutions, these security controls for our customers, I think we might lose a lot of legitimacy, right? So us as McAfee have taken the journey to actually take our own infrastructure and migrate it to AWS. So what does that really mean? Well, McAfee has an expansive infrastructure that's global with many monolithic services that have been decoupled into microservices, utilizing native AWS technology to drive a reduction in operational cost, reduce the friction with operations, security, and IT, and also improve our security posture and the scalability and availability of our products to all of our customers. Of course, inlaid into the overall approach into the migration to AWS, we've also integrated our own security controls into this to ensure that we are staying compliant, and we're testing these prior to rolling them out to you. So as customer zero, we've ensured that these controls are facilitated in the most effective way in AWS, and when you guys are utilizing them or scoping them for potential use, you know that they've gone through the rigorous vetting process that's necessary to ensure that they do align with that responsibility model and also helping you improve your security posture. So to summarize, some key takeaways I'd like you guys all to take is know and prioritize your assets in the cloud. Understand your cloud cyber risk and threat profile. Where do you guys currently stand within your risks? Understand that assessment. Define your key cloud use cases and scenarios and personas. Who are your influencers? Who are going to utilize the actual security controls and in which way? Understand your cloud security control gaps. Allocate resource priorities based on data and criticality and risk profile. And lastly, determine your defensible remediation plan. So ultimately, I would like for every one of you, if you have any questions, approach us, ask me any questions you may have, and organize a follow-up discussion with us to collaborate through the next steps. We actually do have a booth set out. We have demos. We have also subject matter experts out there to discuss with you any concerns that you may have when it comes to implementing these security controls. So overall, I would like to say as McAfee and as everyone in the audience, we drive to actually provide a together as power story, ensuring that we have device to the cloud security and a comprehensive approach that does fill in the security gaps and increases your security posture overall. Thank you.